After a 5-month layoff, Formula E is back with a bang. Antonio Felix da Costa took a clean sweep of pole, fastest lap and the win to stretch his championship lead to a whopping 41 points in Berlin. But the main talking point will be his race-long fight with teammate Jean-Eric Vergne. Could there be a storm brewing at Chachita? This is the Inside Electric podcast, and I am your host, Rob Watts. It's great to be back racing once again, and in true Formula E style, we've got a lot to talk about. With me to chat through all of the day's action are Inside Electric co-founders Hazel Southwell and Peter Leung, and we're very pleased to say that we are joined tonight by a very special guest. It is none other than esteemed motorsport YouTuber Chainbear, or Stuart Taylor, as we prefer to call him.
Hello.
I like the way some
applause there. Yeah, Stuart did wave, do a little wave there for anyone listening to this, not watching this on YouTube. If you are a first-time listener, we are an independent podcast. We cover Formula E and electric motorsport, and you can find us on the socials at Inside Electric or online at inside-electric.com. Coming up in this episode, we will be talking through Antonio Felix da Costa's not perfect weekend, as I incorrectly said, his perfect weekday of pole, win and fastest lap. The storm possibly brewing at Chachita. A little bit of tension there that seems to be showing now after today's race. No points for Vergne, and his pace faded badly in the race. Wasn't a good day for him. And then disaster for da Costa's rivals. Not that Antonio Felix da Costa will be too unhappy about that, but it was not a good day for the likes of Evans and the BMW drivers who will be chasing da Costa down in this championship. Lots to talk about then. Let's start off with Antonio Felix da Costa. Hazel, let's start with you. It was a pretty monster performance all round from Antonio today. And I believe it's the first time a driver has achieved a maximum score of 30 points from an E-Prix weekend.
It is.
Daniel Abt did the same thing a couple of years ago, but he didn't get a pole for the group stage quali then, did he? So this is the first 30-point weekend. I keep saying weekend. Stop putting races on in the week, Formula E. You know what I mean, anyway.
So this is the first time that anyone has scored the perfect 30. As of this season, a point was given to drivers. So in Formula E, you get 25 points for a win, which is the most you can possibly get for your race position. You get 3 points for taking pole. You get 1 point for taking the fastest lap if you finish in the top 10 of the race. And you get another single point if you are the top of the group stages, as well as the person, which is the rounds of qualifying before Formula E goes into Super Pole. To be honest, this season's been a bit of a mess. Nobody won from pole until Marrakesh when Antonio did it. So that was the last race we did, where Antonio took pole and the win. And then he just picked up where we left off, clearly. Those 5 months, they didn't even bother him. And he's back taking pole and the win. Lights the flag. At no point lost the lead. Just pretty much ran away with it. And the additional 2 points.
Yeah, so, I mean, it really couldn't have gone any better, really. I can't think how it could have. Peter, obviously, da Costa was helped by a really fantastic qualifying performance today. He managed to get the pole position. But let's talk a little bit about the race. He looked in control for most of it. In fact, for most of the race, both of the Chachitas, I keep struggling with that word. Both of the black and gold cars look to be fairly comfortable on pace. Did you think that at any point da Costa was in doubt for that win today? He did have a little bit of pressure from Jev alongside him.
At the beginning of the race, it was kind of everyone was running fairly conservatively, and that was the one thing that we were always looking for, which was you've got 6 races What's the strategy going forward? Are you going to go conservative at the beginning in hopes that you can sort of run it as an endurance run and just sort of preserve your car for all 6 races, or do you go straight out of the gate, just flat out? And I think the pace at the beginning was a bit conservative, and then once the safety car came out and then the restart happened, it was pretty much flat out for Antonio and also Jean-Eric Vergne, his teammate. But the two of them got quite racy at one point, and it was really, really fantastic to see. And you got the sort of shades from what happened in Santiago. It was definitely a lot of fun to watch, and also it was I don't think he was in doubt. He was, when I watched his performance, it was just so, the first thing that came to mind was it was so elegant and effortless. It was just he was able to capitalize on every opportunity that was given to him, whether it was taking the attack mode. Everyone was at one point freaking out. It was like, how was it able? Because it looked like he had missed one of the activation zone, but he somehow still managed to get attack mode. So it was really impressive what Antonio did today. I don't think that can be understated, just how perfect a weekday it is for him.
Absolutely. Stuart, let's bring you in for this one. So it's unusual to see drivers leading lights to flag. We see it all the time in Formula One, but not so common in Formula E. But as Hazel said, we've had 2 races now back to back. We've had pole converted to win. How do you rate Da Costa's performance today? Because he looks like he is absolutely brimming with confidence right now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's interesting, really, because we did spend the first half of this season with no particular driver claiming a stake over the championship. We had 5 different winners and the championship lead changing constantly. And now Da Costa's come straight off the back with another win. And like you said, I've never really seen a Formula E driver just hoof it up the road, bearing in mind that this is a racing series where you want to conserve energy as much as possible while maintaining your lead or position. But he seemed to be able to do it without losing energy compared to other drivers, so much so that he was rattling Jev behind him. Never really looked out of control, even when he did take his second attack mode after the full course yellow, I think it was. Just managed to hold on to his lead from Jev. I'm interested to see what am I trying to say? I'm interested to see what the answers are to like how he was able to just have so much pace and why he felt so able to just disappear up the road, which is just such an unusual strategy for Formula E. But it does, especially with him scoring so many points over everyone who was close to him in the championship, it does strike a huge blow to everyone who is looking in with this title, because 6 races to go, it was reasonably close until a few hours ago.
Yeah, it feels like a turning point. I know we've got 5 races still to go, so it would be foolish to write anyone off or give the title to anyone at this stage. But it does seem like that was a huge blow today. Hazel, we saw at one point Antonio, he took his attack mode and he came back out and he just managed to get ahead of Jev, but there was inches in it, and he does not seem afraid of going toe to toe with Jev. And despite Jev's stature in the team and in Formula E, Da Costa's come into that team this season, and he's really kind of stamped his own authority, and he looks like he's absolutely ready to become champion this season. What do you make of the sort of intra team rivalry there?
I think people are really keen to ham that up and to say that Jev and Antonio are going to get into a really big sort of conflict about it. I don't think they are. I think they both said some really heated things on the radio, but my God, like people in Formula E, like they just say like people who are really good friends have said some horrible stuff about each other down the radio in Formula E. Like it's just, it's very frantic. You get no time to say anything. And the radio messages are like, particularly for whatever reason in Formula E, they're often more panicked than they are in other series. Because it's not like you get a long straight to say anything. You're just sort of like hitting the thing and sounding off. And because there aren't G-forces, you can kind of go off for quite a long time immediately. So yeah, I think that, you know, anyone who's saying there's a big beef there is massively overstating it. I think Jeb does know he's the outsider in the team for the title this year. It is his team. He obviously would like to win a third championship. You know, I don't think there's any racing driver who goes like, you know what, I've got enough of those. But well, apart from like Nico Rosberg. But yeah, like
just exactly what he did.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think Jeb's going to be like, oh well, if Antonio DNFs for the rest of the season, out of respect, I won't bother, or something, you know.
I mean, it would be a weird strategy to take.
But it was very clear in Marrakesh that, you know, he was aware that what he'd done was a support role. And I think, you know, he can get his head around that. It's not his favourite thing, but that is how the season is shaken out. And whilst he was, you know, grumbling about Antonio disappearing too fast, I think that was partly because he was obviously having energy management issues that Antonio, for whatever reason, was not. They are different cars, not in the sense that the machinery is different, but in the sense that, like, just they are literally different vehicles. And for whatever reason, Jev all season has struggled generally more with energy management than Antonio has. Antonio's had in that car, which we know is very efficient, some drives of such incredible efficiency that it's just been really mind-blowing, particularly in Santiago, until he had a very last minute in the race order to drop off because suddenly brake temperatures and battery temperatures were so critical. I suspect that's probably what did for Jev this race, when he suddenly dropped back from second to just incredibly uncompetitive and ended up in 20th and way outside the points. Because Jev, I mean, there's lots of theories you can use. It's obviously a very fine margins powertrain, so you can get an incredible amount out of it, but also once it starts going, it's going. They also use different brakes to the entire rest of the grid. They don't use the Brembo brake there. Brembo brakes. They
easy
use
for you to say.
The Citroen rally brakes. So they may have some things that go slightly differently in the car, or not literally the rally brakes, but sort of a variant on that. You know, I don't know what it is, but we know that they have occasional late race issues, and I think that was what happened. And maybe Jed was just struggling with temperatures more than Antonio for whatever reason from the very start.
I just want to bring you back to something you said a moment ago about, I think I didn't hear the radio, but Jack mentioned in the commentary that, or I think Dario mentioned in the commentary that Verne had been on the phone having a little grumble during the race about Da Costa possibly going a bit too hard at one point in the race. What do we think was behind that? Because I'm in your camp in with respect to the whole Verne Da Costa rivalry. I've seen some people suggesting, like, are we heading for another Hamilton Rosberg? I think that's rubbish, absolute rubbish. I don't think it's anywhere near that, and I think they get on really well. And a lot of people,
Carlos and Lando there.
Well, a lot of people forget that Verne and Da Costa, they know each other. They were both in the Red Bull Juniors together, and Verne was quite keen to have Antonio in the team. He was one of the ones that pushed for Techeetah to sign him when he knew that when they knew that Andre Lotter was going to Porsche. So I don't think he would have encouraged, gave his blessing for the team to sign Da Costa if he didn't like him or he felt there was going to be animosity. But I guess Peter or Stuart, did you hear a radio? I didn't. I don't know. Did they play the radio clip? But what do you think about Jev having a little moan during the race?
Yeah, that was quite peculiar. They didn't play the actual radio transmission on the broadcast, but yes, Jack Nicholls did mention that Jev was apparently having a moan about how Antonio was going hard on the race, which from what I presume is race pace, that he was going quite, he was going quite flat out, which, if you're in the front, naturally you want to build a gap and then just have that sort of cushion so that you can pretty much cruise to the finish. And that's exactly what Antonio did. He finished the race, it was 36 laps. He finished with a almost 5.5 second gap, which in Formula E terms is a massive, massive delta. So I'm not 100% sure of what Jev is talking about. I think it's it's just pretty much racecraft.
So I did hear the message, and it is Jev, and it is frantic, and I mean, to some extent it's hard to interpret Jev. But what he's saying is like he's going too hard, not I can't keep up with him, this isn't fair.
He wasn't shouting Skondal.
Yeah.
No.
I would interpret it as anxiety that like he's overusing, we're going to lose this.
So more unhappy with how his own race is going than a criticism of Da Costa's.
Or more like panic that they're going to lose the win.
Yeah.
Because I didn't read that as into team tension. I read that as like in the team tension.
Stuart, how do you view the situation between Jev and Antonio? Do you see any trouble brewing there, or do you think it's just a load of nonsense?
Well, I don't know the drivers intimately as some of you guys who go and actually go to the races and interview them. But I think for a lot of drivers, because of the gap that was sort of forced into the championship, a lot of them who hadn't had seasons that they wanted had sort of been able to have this mental reset and go into Berlin and try and hit it hard and get the maximum out of it. And I think like Hazel said, rather than there necessarily being an antagonism, there is always going to be a tension and anxiety that your race is falling apart, especially as Vergne, off the back of the last two races as well, had started to build up to having better results and was looking possibly for the win, but at least the second place at the time. And I think if he definitely thought through Da Costa's doing or through the team not managing them, some good results were going to fall away from that's definitely a point of anxiety. And for whatever reason, like that kind of thing came to pass for the. But yeah, I don't necessarily, especially if that radio message is as you say it is. That definitely sounds like trying to maximize his own gainings from the race rather than sort of creating something with his teammate.
Absolutely, yeah, I would agree with that, and I think whichever way you look at it now, it wasn't a great day for Jev. He has slipped. I mean, he was an outsider for the championship going into this race, unfortunately, due to results that have happened earlier in the season. But it's looking even less likely now that he's going to be able to muscle his way back in. So it's a huge lead now for Da Costa. It's 41 points. It's the second largest a driver has had at this stage, 6 races into a Formula E season. A curious statistic, though, Sebastian Buemi holds the record for the largest advantage at this point of the season, 43 points in season 3, but remarkably, he did not win that season's championship. Chances of history repeating, or do we think that Da Costa might be on the home stretch now?
I think
stunned silence.
I think if you look across the history of Formula E, so like by this point in season 4, say, where things actually looked much more clear cut in some senses, Lucas Di Grassi had basically DNF'd every single race. He had scored almost nothing.
Yeah, they had the inverter issue, didn't they?
Yeah, his car,
and they just couldn't finish a race.
Malfunctioning. And then he came back and scored a podium in every single other race. And Lucas is a machine, and he is exceptional. And not every driver is going to be able to do that, and not every car is going to be able to do that. The Audi was also the fastest car when it worked that season, and the most efficient. Blah, blah, blah. Plus, he had a new inverter by then. But yeah, you cannot make a prediction because, you know, maybe Antonio was going too hard and his car is now going to suffer. Like
that is definitely a thing that we have to bear in mind with this run of races now, because 6 races in 9 days, we are going to have more mechanical failures. It's surely inevitable. And if you do absolutely rag your car to its limit, you potentially are putting more wear on that, and there is the potential that you could suffer a little bit further down the line. I think Antonio now he's got a comfortable situation in the fact that he probably doesn't have to win another race now this season. I mean, he'll obviously try to, but Peter, do you think that Jev at least can take some encouragement by the pace that he was able to show? And Techita, really struggling with that word today. Techita at least seemed to be very quick out of other blocks this weekend. They look like they've got a car that will fight for podiums and wins now for the rest of the season. Do you think that Jev will take encouragement of that, or do you think he will already start to think now that the championship's over?
Well, like Hazel said, it's, the DS powertrain is one of the most efficient, and as we saw today, it was very, very rapid. Right up until Jev was having issues and sort of falling back, he was racing very hard with Antonio. And so I absolutely would not count Jev out at this point. It is the thing about Formula E is that you cannot make any predictions. Any prediction at best statistically is a 50-50 chance. It's so impossible to predict where everything is going to go. I think what is going to really decide going forward with the 5 races that we've left, and by the way, we've reached the halfway point of the season. Yay! Is that
it's Wednesday?
It's only halfway. It's only halfway. It is hump day. Hump day in the season.
Hump day, halfway. We've crossed the crest, people, and I think what it is going to reward, like the year that Jev won the championship in season 4, is it's going to reward consistency. So if you're always in that sort of window of, always scoring points, always scoring podiums, you don't have to win every race. You just have to be consistent. I think that is the path forward for you if you want to win the Drivers' Championship.
I think consistency plays a huge part. We've seen that a lot in the past. One of the drivers renowned for his consistency. Let's move on to look at some of the other drivers in the title fight, or who we think might have been in the title fight before this race. So Evans did not score. He was on course for some points, but I think he was running, was he 6th or 7th and he got tagged by Gunther? I'm not sure who's to blame for that.
It's Eduardo Mortara.
Was it Mortara? I thought it was Gunther.
No, so Mortara hit Gunter, who hit him. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, okay. Right.
But the
okay.
stewards
That
have
sounds
deemed
fun.
it is Eduardo Mortara who is at fault, whilst Gunter has been disqualified for energy overusage.
Yeah. But the end result being no points for Evans. Stuart, how do you rate Mitch Evans? Because I would have backed him as potentially the driver most likely to take the fight to Da Costa coming into this weekend. And I still wouldn't rule him out because I think he's been sensational this season. What do you think about Mitch Evans?
I like Mitch Evans. I don't. It's going to sound like I disagree with you. I was going to say that. I'm not sure if I would have said
I like Mitch Evans, but I think I
was thinking, who would I most think is going to take it to Da Costa? And I said, maybe. I think at the point Mitch Evans went out, it was all getting a bit, final act of a Formula E race crazy, and he was just in the middle of about 8 cars at that point. I think unfortunate. But yeah, he's been pretty solid this season, and I've enjoyed. I can't see now. I've got to refresh my memory because this whole season just falling out of my head completely. Yeah, he did get that win in Mexico, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
He did. Yes,
it's one of those. Apart from actually Da Costa in recent runs, no one's had a solid, consistent season where they're bringing good points home every race. But I mean, Mitch Evans just came off the back of leading the title for Jaguar. I want to say that's true. No, I mean, Da Costa had it going into this race. But
we spoke about this the other day. Do we say 5 different people have led the championship? Was Evans one of them?
Yeah, so it's exchange happens every time. Sam Bird had it after round 1, then Alex Sims, then Stoffel Van Dorn, then Mitch Evans, then Antonio is the only person to hold it for, well, obviously a really long period because of the lockdown and now 2 races. The only person to have had the title lead but no win is Stoffel Van Dorn. The only person to have won but not have the lead is Max Gunter.
Great stats.
Good. I'm glad you had that all to hand.
Yes, I mean it's been a good season for Evans, and as we've seen, things can turn around quite quickly. So I still think he's in the title fight. The BMW drivers didn't have a very good weekday. I've got it right this time.
Hey.
They were looked off the pace in qualifying. They were 8th and 10th in the race, but I think that became disqualified and 9th, didn't it? Because Gunther got chucked out, and then Simsy got up to 9th, but it wasn't a great day for them. I still think that BMW car is very quick. I would love to know what happened today in terms of their general lack of pace, because they did seem to be quite off it. Any thoughts, guys, on BMW today? It was a bit underwhelming.
I think that they have had races like that previously. So they have been a bit on and off. They're either winning or they're not. The first race in Derrida, Sims got pole, which you probably could say is sort of equivalent to Gunter didn't have terrible qualifying, Sims did. But they then were kind of nowhere in the first race, and then obviously came back and Sims won the second one, and actually they got a 1-2 prior to Max getting penalised for a sort of slightly ambiguous safety car situation. Slightly ambiguous to some people, extremely unambiguous to Lucas Di Grassi, but we'll see. But yeah, I think that we have seen a little bit of that, and this might just be some sort of gremlins being shaken out. Also, there is a thing which Tempelhof is. It was run on concrete. It's a very different surface to other Formula E tracks, so there may well be teams who turn up and are just like, right, we've got no idea what we're doing with the tyres. And then by race 3, they're flipping on it. in a way that
could still happen.
Before.
One driver that did stand out today was Lucas di Grassi. He was 9th and then promoted to 8th, but he started 21st. So, I mean, that was a pretty mammoth recovery. The one thing that's curious about Audi, so di Grassi was 21st on the grid, and I think René Rast on his Audi debut was ahead of him. He was in 14th, I think, 14th or 15th on the grid.
Yeah, he started. He started ahead of Lucas. Yeah,
which is a great performance. But one of the things that I find bizarre about Audi this season is I was looking into stats recently for a piece that I wrote. I was looking at the championship contenders for this season, and I was looking at di Grassi, who was, I think, 5th before this race. And Audi have got the 3rd worst average starting position as a team on the grid. Mm-hmm. I think only Dragon and Neo are lower. And there's a few races this season that di Grassi has qualified like 16th, 17th, down that sort of end of the grid. It just seems that for whatever reason, they just can't get it together in qualifying. They've got very good efficiency, but I just don't know what it is.
So di Grassi in particular has, and we noticed this like really early on in one of the Inside Electric podcasts when we were looking at the top 25 drivers in Formula E. Something that is incredibly notable about di Grassi is he has the biggest points haul ever of any driver in Formula E. He's the most successful driver on most fronts. I think Buemi just about has more wins still, but he's stood on 50% at podiums, or slightly under 50% now, but still is like a really titanic number. And he knows his stats very well, but he has almost no pole positions relative.
Yeah, he has like 2 or something, 3. Maybe.
Yeah, like it's incredibly small number of pole positions. And to be honest, like Daniel's had 1.
Oh gosh, you're
I think when he was driving for that team, maybe 1 or 2, but it's like they've only ever had a handful. And di Grassi has often qualified well, but very rarely at the very front.
It'd be interesting to look at, on a team-by-team basis, number of points teams have scored from outside of the top 10. And it wouldn't surprise me if Audi are right up there to that statistic. It's quite often you do see an Audi recovery drive. But yeah, it won't have done di Grassi any favours today, finishing 8th. And he had a little tussle with Jev, didn't he, as well? Or are you going to tell me that Mortara got in on that one as well?
No, that was di Grassi. Yeah, that was proper di Grassi.
Yeah. So yeah, all in all, a peculiar day, really. Costa absolutely bossing it, and everyone we thought might have been his main challenger just didn't seem to fancy it today. It was a very good weekend for Andre Lotterer. P3 on the grid in the Porsche was a fantastic result, and then he converted that to P2. He said after the race he had mixed feelings as he felt he might have actually been able to challenge da Costa for the win had he not missed. I think he missed his attack mode activation at one point.
Yeah, his first attack mode activation.
Yeah. I mean, we've spoken about this before in previous episodes. It's kind of baffling how Lotterer can produce results like that, and Neil Jani still hasn't scored a point. And I think he was, where did he start today? 18th, 19th. It's a huge. What's the word I'm looking for?
There's a massive deficit there.
Yeah. There's a huge deficit in performance between those two drivers. Probably the largest I can think of.
So the situation with what's going on at Porsche is that, Andre has the benefit of 2 years at Techeetah, and he had a really good teammate in Jev who was able to teach him a lot of things. He was particularly proud. I remember the first year after he was in Formula E, was particularly proud of his qualifying pace. Like that was his 1 lap. His 1 lap pace where he was able to progress. was something that he was particularly proud of, and sort of just adapting to the Formula E style of driving, which, as we know, is very bespoke. It's all motorsport, but Formula E is such a unique thing that you really have to sort of adapt to it in order to thrive. Whereas Neil Jarni, who comes from, sports cars and single-seaters and, the sort of internal combustion era, he still has that sort of classical style of driving, and he hasn't really fully adapted to Formula E style yet. Mind you, he did have a less than auspicious start in
the Dragon.
Yeah, he two races in Hong Kong, and then they parted ways. And then with Porsche, it was sort of the opportunity that he was looking for to make his mark. Unfortunately, with limited races, and also with COVID-19 sort of changing everything and upending the entire season, he's just not had the amount of running that he needs in order to progress the same way that Andre has.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for Neil Jarni, it looks as though his Formula E races are numbered now. It looks like he won't be retained for next season. We believe Pascal Wehrlein will end up there, although it's not been confirmed yet, but I think that's probably fairly likely. The team that Pascal Wehrlein left halfway through the season seemed to have bounced back quite nicely. They had a really rocky start to the season, Mahindra. I spoke to Dilbag Gill, who we should add, we send our best wishes to, because he has tested positive for COVID, and he's sat out the race today. He's in quarantine for the time being, at least. He said to me that he was really confident that they would bounce back really strongly in Berlin, and they did. D'Ambrosio was top 6 in all the practice and qualifying sessions, and he was P5 in the race today, so that was pretty impressive. Hazel, thoughts on that?
I think Mahindra have been making some massive changes just all this season. They felt that there were some things that compromised them during season 5, which they started off very strongly, and then things seemed to kind of like not quite work out. They were championship leaders at one point, and then it fell away. So they decided season 6 was going to be a transitional season for them. They've done things like bring their engineering in-house. It had been Campos who'd done it. And they have moved all of their facilities. They had 2 different facilities, one in Banbury, one in Spain, and like a few other sort of like slightly disparate bits, which you could have called factory. They've now moved that all into the same facility. And they've been making sort of like major changes. They've changed driver. We've got Alex Linin, who will have been disappointed not to score, but given quite a chaotic race and sort of like slightly weird circumstances, I think he did pretty well. I don't think anyone's going to be angry at him. And yeah, like overall an improved situation to where they were qualifying, especially like Jerome, who Dilbag will admit to you was, at least relative to Wehrlein, the worst qualifier.
Yeah, he's not great, is he? At qualifying, I should add. He's never been a good qualifier.
But yeah, on a one-lap pace, Wehrlein was certainly quicker, and I think Jerome would admit that, because the numbers are there. But yeah, like he was well up there. He was in Superpole. That's very encouraging. They had decent race pace, a good step forward for them, and kind of proof that the car isn't a dog. It's just something that they needed to work on and to get stuff together on. Comparatively, I think the Porsche is a dog, and it's just that Lotterer is able to kind of like, when he's in a good position, he can get stuff out of it, and maybe he just had an opportunity in Tempelhof. That the drive that happened today is definitely not what happened in Mexico, for instance. And maybe it's that the Porsche has thermal management issues, and so the fact it was a bit later and a bit cooler was better. But like he took Lotterer took pole in Mexico and finished I'm not even sure he finished.
I don't think he did. Well, he was well down because he had damage.
Yeah, but also he was absolutely nowhere on the pace of the other cars around him. He was slipping back immediately.
No.
So, because the car was simply inefficient. So I think we're starting to see actually almost more of a realistic order of the way that the cars are pulling out.
That's about as close as you'll get to hearing Hazel pay Andre Lotterer a compliment. I think there was a compliment in there somewhere because
I did say that he can take opportunities with that car. He is an experienced driver and he is a good driver.
He can.
I think there's a lot of hype around Andre Lotterer, and it's healthy for there to be a dissenting voice.
Yeah, and we will do another podcast on Hazel's views on Andre Lotterer another day. Stuart, a good day today for Sam Bird. He's had a really rocky season. He won Indiria, and then he's had a couple of DNFs, and he's had a couple of 10th place finishes, but it's generally been a bit of a disappointing season. I think he would have fancied himself as a title challenger after that opening race, but back on the podium today, he'll be obviously super motivated now to finish that season on the high, because he's got a pretty big challenge next season at Jaguar. How do you think that that Bird and Evans lineup will shape out next season at Jaguar? Because I think, and we've spoken about this on a previous episode, we think that could be potentially one of the most exciting driver lineups on the grid.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely time for Bird to try something different. It's very hard being someone who likes Sam Bird and just watching misfortune before him, just constantly throughout his career. It did seem a bit of a shock, but to see him stepping away from that Virgin brand. But we're seeing Jaguar in a stronger position than we've been used to, as you said, and I agree with you, Evans, a strong driver. I think next year that team with the pair of them could be something. We don't know what, We turn up to testing next year and everyone's in a completely different place, and then we'll be talking about how Mahindra are going to walk the championship. Thanks to their transitional year.
Mahindra are going to do a Brawn next
exactly,
year.
That's
Hey, there you go.
Dragon are going to do a Brawn.
Dragon,
yes.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Out of the remains of Dragon will come the Honda factory team no one expected.
Yeah, well, I'll look forward to that. But yeah,
out
of interest, Stuart, who do you think would come out on top over a season, Bird and Evans? Because Bird is another bad day for Frines today. Bird has smashed Frines this season, absolutely smashed him. He's out-qualified him, I think, in every race, and he scored, I think Frines only got 10 points. He's had a really poor season, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bird is a very strong driver. He just hasn't ever managed to get everything lined up in a row over a course of a season. And he nearly had second as well, but for a last lap. It is tricky, isn't it? Because Evans is hot stuff right now. I'll say stuff. And Bird has been in there for a long time. So it is that kind of, old wise sensei versus young protagonist together. I think it's going to be one of those healthy relationships. None of these Rosberg Hamilton nonsense. I think it's going to be the kind of teammates that work together, from what I know about them, to make.
But if you had to put your house on one,
I'm going to put my house on Evans, the house that I wish I owned as a millennial.
Oh.
I'll put it on Evans. I'll see you this time next year. We can discuss how that went.
Interesting, very interesting. We're running a little bit short on time now, so we've got a couple of points to just cover off before we finish up. I've got to use a swear word here. The only way you can describe James Colado's day, utter shit. To the point where I feel really, really sorry for it. I think probably is thinking, I just want to go home. Could anything, and I think I mentioned this in the chat, he's probably going to get back from Berlin and find that he left the freezer door ajar or something like that, or his boilers broke or something. He had a 60-place grid penalty, which is like McLaren 2016 or 2017, whenever era sort of standard. And
but he made up 44 places in the race, so that's
he
pretty
did.
good.
He did speak up. That is an excellent point. And for that reason, he gets driver of the day. Stunning progress. Senna-esque. But yeah, not much else to say about poor James Gallardo. Mixed day
finish
for
the race.
He did finish the race.
So whilst he had a lot of issues, he did finish the race. So tomorrow has a decent chance of being like substantially better.
Yeah. Yeah. Fingers crossed for him. It can't get any worse, can it? But it's frustrating for him because, he's probably lost his drive and he probably would have been hoping to finish these runner races with some respectability. But really, he had no chance today.
It's very odd to be.
Hazel, you looked at me then as if
you were just like, I imagine he wanted to finish these races with like some self-respect or professional respect. Or
No. I didn't say self-respect. I said some degree of respectability for his season, not for his personal.
I got what you were aiming for. But
I don't. I'm not suggesting he's having an existential crisis or anything like that. I'm sure he's comfortable where he is in life.
Oh no, go ahead, suggest a way, because it's very hard to be driving. Like it's very hard to stay motivated when you're driving with an expiration date over your head, where you're like, oh yeah, with like T -5, and then it just, I mean, that I can't imagine what that does to your brain when you're just like, you know that you're not going to be with this team next year and things are not going well. In free practice, half your car is missing because they're replacing every bits under the sun. It's not great.
Yeah.
Then it nearly electrocutes you to death.
Exactly. Yes. And then they had to have the full extrication and it was not great. Not great.
Bad day.
No.
Yeah.
Bad day.
Mixed day for the newcomers and the returnees. So Apt was 9th in the Neo. I think he made a comment.
He was 9th.
No,
sorry, 19th. 19th.
That's a great day for the Neo.
Yeah. Got out of the car.
All the way out.
With 9.
Yes. Brilliant.
Neo team were really absolutely buzzing with 9th place, and Daniel storms in. 19th. Sorry. It's going to be tough for him in that car, but it's great to have him back. Really good day for Rene Rast, who scored points on not his debut.
Yes.
His debut for Audi, but not his Formula E debut. He did have a race 4 years ago, something like that. And which is very good and boosts his chances, which are already pretty decent, of getting that drive for next season.
In that race?
Did
he score points in that race?
What race?
The one he did 4 years ago.
No,
No, he didn't.
I don't know why.
No.
I don't know what happened. But
otherwise, I was going to say he's got a chance to score 100% of his points in Berlin, or like
he finished like 16th or something.
Point scoring rate or something. Anyway.
Well, he will have by the end of the season. He would have done 7 Formula E races, all of them in Berlin, which I don't think that along with James Gallardo's 44 overtakes, I don't think that's another record that will be beaten. Yes. Alex Lynn, we mentioned, he looked like he was on course for some points in the first half of the race, and then he faded a bit. He lost 3 places in one go with a attack mode. He took attack mode and then lost 3 places, and then never really recovered back into the points after that. And Sergio Sotocamara, Brazilian, making his debut in the Dragon's Den. 21st I don't know how to even say, like, what do you say about Dragon? Is that good? Is that bad? Who knows?
Well, I mean, he finished.
He finished.
He did.
He
Wayla
did finish
didn't.
the race, yeah. 45 seconds, but he finished the race.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
So,
it was good.
yeah, it was. It was. I mean, meanwhile, his teammate Nico Mola ran out of power. Like, what, 3 laps to the end? Yeah,
he was absolutely. I think he was trying to catch Da Costa or something in his head, but he was absolutely gutting it. Right, we're very nearly up for time, but I think one more thing that we should just quickly talk about before we finish up. Positively charged. As Hazel downs her drink, let's...
It is just water, I just want to say.
Just to add, what did we make of that? Any thoughts?
Should we start another podcast?
Yeah.
Because it's
coming up after the break.
Certainly felt like, yeah. Hazel, go ahead. Yeah.
Not as big a clusterfuck as F1, I would say.
Yeah. So my
different flavour.
Yeah.
I had a go at Formula E. Well, I didn't think it was that controversial, but a while ago, I said on Twitter that, Formula E done nothing that surprised me because overall they're more diverse, they're more promoting of confrontational topics. They're not often very afraid to get involved on social issues, particularly stuff like climate change and whatever. Like Formula E is quite confrontational, and Formula E has done things like in pushing for the race in Saudi Arabia, force Saudi Arabia to let women drive. Like that was a knock-on effect of that race happening.
It's decent of them to do that.
Yeah, but also, like, I mean, it didn't, whilst I don't want to credit Formula E with that, it was the political clout that kind of shoved some of it, and they certainly didn't kind of go like, oh, well, that's cool, we'll just take your money and ignore that problem, kind of. Obviously there's a long history of activism that has to be credited with that change actually happening, but still, Formula E does engage with social change in the areas where it works, and it is massively disappointing and colossally embarrassing to me for them to be like, oh, well, we're, when they told me that they were coming up with something really big for Berlin, I believed that they were putting together something really thorough, really thoughtful, and really extensive, because that is what I kind of believe Formula E would do. What they put together was something incoherent, offensively muddled, and completely incomprehensible. You cannot have, as a blanket concept, something that has a single gesture which stands to oppose climate change, to support vulnerable children across the world, to stand in solidarity with and memory of people who have died of COVID and the frontline workers who are fighting it, to fight the to affirm, not fight, that's too confrontational, to affirm their stance against all forms of discrimination, which is such a cop-out phrase. It is such a cop-out phrase. Say racism, sexism, homophobia, misogyny, transphobia, like list the things, because otherwise it could be like, oh, well, forms of discrimination. Well, Karen is anti-vax and the PTA says she's not allowed to stick up her posters at the meetings anymore, like
Bloody Karen.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But you have to be firm on these things, and you have to state literally what you believe in. And that was kind of what I was asking them for in the first place. And the fact that they have not only not done that, but created this hugely ambiguous thing, which was then tied into, and I actually think this is quite offensive, to have a moment of reflection, which is also tied into the death of somebody who worked for Formula E, and worked with a lot of people who were on site and who worked on building that site, and to not detach it from the situation. Like, you can look at only a few of the drivers knelt. Well, I think it was quite ambiguous whether you should kneel. Should you kneel? Is it a memorial? Is it what's it about?
It wasn't clear what the intended purpose of it was.
Yeah, because with the Formula One thing, it's very unambiguous. They have a moment where they kneel, and that is specifically they're all wearing the T-shirts. They know what that's about. And it's before the national anthem, and it's a separated thing. And okay, we don't have the national anthem. We don't have all that pomp and circumstance stuff. But you can't have 1 minute of silence or like 30 seconds of silence or whatever it was that blanket covers all issues. Like we're going to do it tomorrow for like Lebanon, and then we'll also do something, in solidarity with seafarers. Like it's all so completely abstract from each other and not issues which you can in any way conflate. Like you could say, okay, because of what we are as Formula E, we're going to take a particular line and say, here's things that we can meaningfully affect, which is that we're going to look at the disproportionate number of Black and Indigenous people who are affected, or Black people of colour and Indigenous peoples who are affected by the direct effects of climate change.
Yeah.
You could go like, we're just going down this route because this is what we focus on and this is meaningful to us. And we're also going to work on diversity and the environment within our organisation and within our paddocks and whatever. But you can't, but you could say like as an activism front for something that we can meaningfully work on, that's something that we can do. So you can blend it with those other issues, and you can say that, yes, we're going to continue this as part of our partnership with UNICEF, et cetera, et cetera. It's not that it's an impossible message. I'm coming up with that off the top of my head, and I am not the huge branding agencies and PR departments and the people who activate partnerships and all of these people who exist triplicate in every organisation in the motorsport industry. There are more PRs per thing in motorsport than almost anything else. And yet they cannot manage to put together, you can put together a coherent message about like the most obscure in partnership with like, these people make blockchain brand assisted buggies, which we're suddenly linking to our LMP1H team because of, and like there'll be a perfectly written press release which will land 15 times a day in my inbox for that, but nobody can give me an incoherent thing about this. And I think it is shameful. It is shocking. And more than that, it's going to alienate so many people like Formula E, because it is not Formula One, because it is something that is accessible and that actually at least looked like it understood this. And it doesn't. Because if they think that this is what months from when I started kind of whining at them about this, or pressuring them about this, to now, if they think this is a thought through product, what the hell? It's a disaster. And they are being rightfully rinsed on the internet for it. And I'm not going to do a single thing to defend them, because, which is quite rare for me. I'm normally quite, keen to think the best of Formula E, but I'm afraid that they have dropped this one so staggeringly, there is no other phrase for it. Sorry.
No, don't apologise.
Don't sit on the fence, Hazel. God's sake.
She has a habit of doing this. I mean, just say what you think. Honestly, you've really got to work on that.
Sorry.
Before we end up merging this into tomorrow's episode, Peter and Stuart, do you have anything that you might like to add to that?
Oh, for positively charged, like it's
keep it positively brief, if you could.
I can be positively brief, and I can say that positively charged. I mean, the hashtag we talk about so much nowadays about performative optical allyship. Just kind of coming up with these generic boilerplate platitudes to just kind of appear that you're doing something. And, positively charged with the hashtag sounds like something that came from a PR agency with not a whole lot of it just seems so ambiguous and so vacuous that you don't really actually know what it stands for. And then you find out, oh, this is what it stands for with the list of things that Hazel just talked about with climate change and, the death of a team member. And then, the sort of blanket, standing against discrimination and all of those things. And it really just, what it does is when you're standing for so many things at the same time, it really just dilutes the message. And you have no idea what you are actually standing for. And it's very hard for people to sort of focus, and it's very, very hard for people to sort of hone what are we supposed to pay attention to. So it's just I think it definitely needs a rethink on this. It's it's a negatively discharged for me right now. So it's not going well.
Yeah, I think in trying to stand up for too many things, it's ended up not really standing properly for any of these causes.
And you have to be really specific. And, you're saying, okay, we're standing up against all of these things, but where's the call to action? What are you going to do about it? Where's the framework? What's the plan of action going forward? There's none of that in what they are proposing. And they really, really, I mean, Hazel, you remember, they really hyped this up.
Yeah.
And then now we're just kind of can you blame us when we are let down this way?
I feel really annoyed that they told me to shut up about this because they had a plan. Because if this is the plan, I should have spent the last 2 months shouting at them.
Mm. Stuart, your thoughts?
Stuart, yes.
Well, I'll say off the top that I totally agree with both Hazel and Peter, what they say. I saw two points, I think, really. The first is, I think, a good, meaningful bit of activism, or whatever you want to call this, I think has to be, the difference between a good and a bad version is kind of the same as a difference between a good and a bad YouTube apology, in that you have to understand why you're doing it, what the meaningful part of it is, and what you're going to do about it. And there was, no hashtag or scripted sort of puff piece is going to do that, and that's why this sort of felt kind of empty. And I think also, I mean, we're here for 6 events, and if one really wants to do this, we care about many things. You could do day one. Well, probably day one, one of our people died, so let's just have a moment of silence and remember them. Day 2, we acknowledge that the Black and people of color communities are, unfairly oppressed in the world, and blah blah blah, and this is something you should think about. And then day 3, climate change is ravaging the blah blah. You already giving a script to the commentators. They could explain why we're focusing on this in this particular day, and you can give it all. And I found it confusing because when they started, I was looking at them as like, okay, so it's a moment of silence, so it's not a kneeling thing. Everybody's standing. Okay, I get it. And then we cut to some people kneeling. So does that mean they're the only people that care about racism, or that the other people aren't thinking about racism? They're thinking about whatever the other things are. It was just, but I mean, we've got time to focus on different things if they want to.
I think in defense of the drivers, because I know that's been a very, very, very hot topic on social media recently in Formula One, certain drivers not taking the knee. Mm-hmm. I think in defense of the Formula E drivers, it looks as though the communication about whether to kneel or not and what they were kneeling for, or if they were going to kneel, like it wasn't communicated very well. So I wouldn't be quick to jump to a conclusion about any driver and say, he obviously doesn't support this because he didn't do this. I think it looked like it just wasn't communicated and organised incredibly well today.
And let's be clear, I wasn't suggesting that was.
Oh no, I wasn't.
That's what it's sort of the framing of it just suddenly made it.
I think it's more. I say that because I think people might look at that and jump to maybe the same conclusions as perhaps some people have with certain Formula One drivers. So, but I think, unfortunately, and I think what you say there, Stuart, if you've got the perfect opportunity with 6 races, you could bring awareness to 6 different courses if you wanted to, but to try and bungle them all together into one blob and get that out of the way early doors, it just hasn't really hit the mark. And for whatever reason, it just has. I don't feel like it's had the intended impact that perhaps they thought it might have, and it certainly does need a rethink. Right, a rather emotionally charged end to the episode, and before we wind Hazel up and get her going for another 20 minutes, I think we'll maybe call time on that now, because I'd quite like to edit this and get this out tonight and have some kind of sleep.
Till tomorrow. It starts again.
No sleep till Berlin. So, yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the Berlin E-Prix, actually.
Hey.
Oh, you picked up. I forgot you were even on this call. Right, okay. I will say with a reasonable degree of confidence that is it for this episode now, unless anyone has anything that they would like to add. My thanks to Stuart, Inside Electric podcast debutant.
Thank you for having me.
How do you feel your first time went? And I realise I phrased that rather awkwardly.
How would you grade yourself? It was a pleasure. It's always fun chatting with people who absolutely know their stuff. Earlier I nearly said something that every guest on a podcast always says is, "Are you allowed to swear?" And I didn't get to say. People who know really.
Would you have approached this podcast differently had you have known up front that you can swear?
Oh yeah, effing and blinding. I mean, you've been in the media centre with me before.
I mean, not that I want any of these episodes to be like,
like Sleep Central.
Yeah, like a Gunther Steiner biopic, but the odd F or it is okay, I think. But yes, thank you very much, Stuart, for your time. You've been excellent, and I'm sure I speak for everyone else. I'd say we're happy to have you on again anytime you would like to come and talk Formula E. Thanks also to Hazel and Peter for your expert and passionate opinions. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. I wasn't saying that to you too, by the way. I don't think you need to subscribe. But to anyone else listening, please subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes, of which there are loads. We have another one tomorrow, and we have one after every race of the rest of this season. The rest of this 9-day period anyway. Please also do consider leaving us a review while you are there, because that really does make a huge difference to us, and it allows other Formula E fans to find us, discover our content, and hopefully enjoy it. We are an independently run website, so please consider backing us on Patreon, and in return you will get some exclusive benefits, additional bonus content, monthly Ask Us Anything video, which have proved quite fun, and we've discussed quite a broad range of topics recently. You get early access to each and every podcast episode. You get access to the Discord chat, which is rather interesting as well. And obviously, in a normal season, when we were at races at the start, we were giving you extra video content from the paddock. It's a bit tricky to do that now, but next season we will be doing that as well. We are back tomorrow for race 2 in Berlin, and we have Jess McFadden. I do hope I've pronounced that correctly. Jess is Director of Digital Strategy for the Motorsport Network. So we're really excited to have Jess on, and I'm sure that'll be great. So please keep your eyes peeled for that. I've been your host, Rob Watts, and this has been the Inside Electric podcast, and we will catch you again very, very soon. Thank you.
just going to say it's Da Costa's perfect weekday.
Weekday.
Oh God, yeah. Of course it is.
The first. Oh, and Da Costa wins the first midweek Formula E race.
Yeah.
Ever.
Okay. Perfect weekday.
Weekday. Perfect day.
Definitely
Perfect day
gonna get that wrong.
It feels wrong, doesn't
James
it?
Collado has had a dirty weekday.
He has.